November the 10th, 1918. Germany's monarchy came to an abrupt and irretrievable end. But not without helping its royal train to a final starring role, before rendering it obsolete for good. But not yet redundant. But before we can trace the last remains of Germany's royal train, we need to talk about what made up 1918's royal train to begin with. My model portrays the original consist completed in 1891. I dedicated a whole video to it. In fact, multiple even. But by the start of World War I, most coaches had been superseded by more modern ones, reflecting the railway's rapid development, with older ones kept as backup. Already in 1891 was a collection expanded by a smaller 4-axle saloon coach for Kaiser Wilhelm II himself, and a combined kitchen and dining car. Both of them, numbered 11 and 12 respectively, were the preferred choice for shorter journeys. But as the combined kitchen and dining car proved to be far more practical than the 2-car setup of the main consist, followed a larger 6-axle combined car in 1897 as number 15. The numbers 13 and 14 were occupied by additional baggage cars built in 1893. And also additional sleepers for the entourage were added, as number 4A for the ladies in 1898 and as 3A for the gentlemen in 1901. But except for the main saloon number 1 and the new combined kitchen and dining car, where up to that point all royal coaches built with just 4 axles. As such were heavier and even more elaborate replacements only a matter of time, as soon as reliably smooth running 3-axle bogies became available. And thus in 1901 began work on a second generation of coaches. In total 6 sleepers for entourage and servants, and 4 saloons were delivered until 1911. 2 of them for the Kaiser, and the other 2 for the Kaiserin Auguste Victoria, one of each being intended as backup. Nonetheless, were 4 axles still deemed enough for the baggage cars, so also the final one delivered in 1910, number 16, only had 4. But with the outbreak of the war in 1914 came the continuous modernization of the train to an end. And so came the lavish paintwork of blue and white. The royal train, now painted in dark green, blended right in with regular coaches. But what did not change were Kaiser Wilhelm's traveling habits. Far from the actual battlefield, posing as the confident commander he never was. In fact, he wasn't involved in military decision-making at all. He still found countless people to meet and hands to shake, but lost more and more the trust of the German military and the trust of the German public. When on November the 9th, Max von Baden declared the not yet actually happened abdication of Wilhelm as Kaiser of the German Empire and King of Prussia, Wilhelm had already left Berlin for the headquarters of the Oberste Heeresleitung, the Supreme Army Command, in the Belgian town Spa, where in fact for about a week he had to reside in his royal train before moving into a proper residence for just a few days. The November Revolution was in full swing, and so were rumors about rebellious troops heading towards Spa. Doubting also the loyalty of the troops at the headquarters, the Kaiser searched yet again for safety inside his train, before leaving at 5 AM next morning, heading towards the neutral Netherlands, with some of his entourage following behind in motor cars. But the ride didn't last very long. After only about 10 minutes, the train stopped. Despite its ordinary green paint scheme, was the royal train still an obvious target. So in fear, the fleeing Kaiser changed into one of his entourage's motor cars before continuing his desperate journey into exile, where at a station platform, under verbal attacks from passers-by, he would wait for his train to catch up. But once again, residing inside his train, his unchanged habits still have not acknowledged the seriousness of his situation. When next morning he welcomed in the Dutch deputation for breakfast, there was nothing anyone could do to stop Wilhelm from dragging them into an intimate discussion about everything and nothing. A discussion nobody asked for, and a discussion that felt more than inappropriate given the circumstances. Therefore, the Dutch deputies listened carefully, but most of the time kept quiet. But already the same day, he would be accepted into the Amerongen castle, ending his royal voyages once and for all. In exile, he would no longer need his train. And in difference to various estates and properties, was the coach's ownership never disputed. They were returned to the Prussian railways in 1919 and became part of the newly formed Deutsche Reichsbahn the year after. Some saloon coaches were kept for the President and Chancellor of the young Republic, or could be hired for groups, which rarely happened. But for the rest, there was no real use in the current state. There were excellent pieces of rolling stock, however, and as such were given the chance of a new career. Some of them came to the 1916 founded Metropa, the German company in charge of dining cars and sleepers, but the majority of them had a much more exciting, if yet often overlooked, career. They became departmental wagons. Hear me out, as they were the perfect basis for test and training coaches, with one of them receiving in 1936 the honor of being the dynamometer car behind 05002, while setting her, short-lived, speed record of 200.4 kilometers per hour. Two of the Kaiserin saloons and one of the Entourage sleepers could via the departmental way escape scrapping and still exist today. However, initially, only a single coach, the original 6-axle saloon from 1889, now number 11, it had to give up its original number 1 to the last of its successors, the other one having been numbered 1A, and received as no only second backup the number from the short distance saloon, which used to be 11, and which used to be the second backup, and was now withdrawn from the Royal Fleet. Confused? Yeah, same. Only the original saloon was meant for preservation in the Berlin Transport Museum. There it arrived in refurbished condition about 3 years after Wilhelm's abdication, before being repainted into its original livery for the 100th anniversary of railways in Germany in 1935. Its future was in safe hands. Until the next war broke loose. To protect this valuable piece of rolling stock from expected air raids, it was removed from the museum in 1943 and moved to a locomotive shed in Sudaunjin, Zelenzig in German. And while the objective of keeping it safe from air raids was successful, could that very well have been its last goodbye. Removable furniture like carpets, washing or writing equipment was left in Berlin, but ultimately got lost in the post-war chaos. And Sudaunjin, along with the locomotive shed and the coach inside, fell into Soviet hands, where it was not seen as an historic artifact, but rather as simply a piece of rolling stock. And after some modifications, was even put back into service for military trains, before finally being returned to the East German Reichsbahn in 1950. It took until 1954 for it to be identified as what it is. And surprisingly, despite being a memento of the monarchy, it was withdrawn following its rediscovery and assigned to the not yet finished Dresden Transport Museum. But lack of funding for its restoration and being a royal coach in red territory, fearing an iconoclastic riot, it was stored away in absolute secrecy. While the information about it being stored near Dresden came first to light in 1965, was the search for the royal saloon long from being over, as it took until 1987 for the leaked information to be officially confirmed, finally opening up the possibility for it to return to Berlin, into its new transport museum. And indeed, soon after Germany's reunification, the coach was transported to Potsdam for external restoration, before finally being presented to the public in 1993. And after half a century, it could finally return to Berlin, where it can be seen to this day, and where slowly but steadily also its interior is being restored. A big thank you goes to Dave Heise for commissioning the Royal series, as well as all my channel members, including Contrean, Dan, Getter, Kay Frankley, Lucas Ilskens, Macgan1220, Manus Moba, Martin Zotan Vigican, Michael Beck, SGD Scuba, Søren Dominic Cook, Steamy Player, The Soulless Redbeard, The Steff1309, White Elder, and 2 Drittel Max for making these videos possible.